We said we'd wait until the deadline passed, and if the Dodgers hadn't made moves, we'd be upset. We got very, very close to that, but the Dodgers made the move. They got Jack Flaherty. They got a couple of other pieces. We'll get into it. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase lockedonmlb for a first deposit match up to $100. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, you can make it easier on yourself by subscribing and being notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live like we are here on Tuesday afternoon after the deadline. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. You picked a good episode to hop on by. My name is Vince Samperio. That's my co-host, Jeff Snyder. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team for a decade now in various capacities, with this podcast being a great part of that capacity. And we've been through a lot of trade deadlines, and we've seen the Dodgers take it past the deadline before in terms of when we found out news. And they almost got to that point on Tuesday, but just before the deadline, we got the news that the Dodgers made the move for a starting pitcher, and they got the best starting pitcher traded at the deadline.
Yeah, we talked yesterday. Flaherty might have been third on our list of maybe even fourth if you talk about the unrealistic option of Blake Snell. But, Garrett Crochet, Tarek Skubal, obviously Skubal would have been number one. Crochet has the upside, but Flaherty, like you said, those other guys didn't get traded. Flaherty was absolutely up there on our list of the guys likely to be traded. He was there at the top of the list of who we wanted. And realistically, this was always going to come down to the last minute. When that there had been reports that the Yankees and Red Sox were also in the bidding for Flaherty. Who knows? You never know if those reports are true. But the Tigers, it made sense for them to draw out the bidding until the last minute. The crazy thing was, after all drawing out that bidding, setting up a bidding war, all that stuff, what the Dodgers had to send to the Tigers to get Flaherty was remarkably less than I had feared.
Yeah, you look at Yusei Kikuchi to the Astros last night, and they sent out what was considered a haul by people that know prospects a lot better than we do. When you see what the Padres gave up for a rental and reliever in Tanner Scott earlier in the day, and they gave up 3 of their top 10 prospects, not top 10 in baseball, but of their top 10 prospects. And then you see the Dodgers, and they didn't give up. And they traded from depth with Tyrone Liranzo, the catcher, getting traded, and then they traded a guy that they got for a reliever in the offseason in Trey Sweeney, who wasn't going to hit enough to really play shortstop for the Dodgers anyways. And if you can find a lot of glove first no hitting shortstops out there in the world. We've seen it this year with Nick Ahmed getting picked up off his couch a couple or last week. So yeah, for what it cost, for what other teams paid, it really does seem like, the Tigers either really, really, really like these guys, or maybe they felt like the old one, like after Eduardo Rodriguez kind of played the Dodgers last year. Maybe they're like, you know what, let's just get the deal done.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's a lot to like about Liranzo. I think Liranzo is a very good hitter. We don't know if he's going to be a catcher long-term or a first baseman, and that's a big difference when it comes to the defensive spectrum and overall value. If he's not a catcher, he's a power hitting first baseman. If he's a power hitting catcher, that's potential to be very valuable. But in the end, like we set ourselves up. We've kind of we knew the Dodgers had to make some moves. They had holes they need to fill, and we knew it was going to be a seller's market because the playoff format has changed things, so there aren't as many selling teams. So we had kind of prepared ourselves. It's going to be painful. There's going to be names that we really like that leave the organization. And in the end, the two biggest names that left the organization were Miguel Vargas and Tyrone Lorenzo, who, Vargas, we talked about him yesterday, didn't have a place on the Dodgers. Love Vargas, happy for him. No pain at all for him leaving the Dodgers. And Lorenzo, down the line a couple of years, we may look back and say, oh, the Dodgers really could use Tyrone Lorenzo right now. But at the moment, and forgetting the best pitcher who was traded, I couldn't believe it when Robert Murray tweeted that was the full trade. I was like, okay, Bert must be wrong. There must be more names trickling in. But nope, that was the whole trade.
It felt like they added an extra name the other day in Noah Miller in the other trade, and then it felt like maybe they were missing a name here. But you know what? The Dodgers got it done. They got the best pitcher traded at the deadline, and it was exciting in the moment. Like, it's one of those where the last couple of years we haven't quite had that excitement at the deadline, and maybe even a little bit jaded off the fact of losing to the Padres the year before that, and then losing to the Braves the year before that, and it just was a little bit different. But this was genuinely exciting. That the Dodgers can, now you can bank on guys coming back, but you don't necessarily. You still need Mookie Betts and hopefully Max Muncy to come back for sure. But on the pitching side, like if Yamamoto doesn't make it back, you now have a capable guy there to slot in number 2, and then you see what else kind of goes out the rest of the way in terms of who pitches any other postseason games. But you have that locked in. You got the arm. You give yourself a little bit of breathing room in the sense of the rotation. You give yourself a little bit of breathing room in the sense of the bullpen with Michael Kopech, and then the Dodgers also picked up Kevin Kiermaier, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the next segment. But yeah, for Jack Flaherty, last year he got traded at the deadline, didn't quite work out, but he was a little bit different pitcher last year. He did work on some stuff, and he's been really good. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He does get a lot of strikeouts. That usually plays well in October. And then, to wrap it all up, he's from LA. Like he grew up in LA. He's from here, and his mom's already posted on Twitter a picture of him in Dodger gear from back in the day. So that's fun.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. We got it with Tyler Glasnow in the offseason, get to come home play for his hometown team. Same for Flaherty here. Maybe same for Max Fried in the offseason. We'll see. But it's coming into today. We knew the Dodgers needed to add a starting pitcher. We would have loved for them to also add Brent Rooker. But, in the end, not every trade deadline can be an A+. In fact, I don't know if there's such a thing as an A+ trade deadline. But this was about as close to an A as you can get, when you understand that there's some A's that are 94% and some A's that are 98%,
Yeah, exactly. So it was, being involved in like some other Dodger chats, it was one of those where, you wait till the end and kind of figure it out. And, everything else before that is just kind of, you're just killing time by maybe complaining a little bit. And
people were melting down.
Yeah,
it was.
But the Dodgers got it done, and the Dodgers are a better team than they were a couple of days ago. And, it's one of those things where you look at every other team that's maybe going to compete with the Dodgers in the National League. The Phillies swapped out, and they got Austin Hayes to kind of platoon out there in the outfield, but they didn't necessarily get too much better. The Padres did pick up Tanner Scott. Their back of the bullpen does look pretty strong, but they did pick up Martin Perez, but the Padres still have been kind of inconsistent throughout this season, and so the Dodgers. But the Dodgers just had a better hot streak in between all that, and the Dodgers have a higher ceiling and a higher floor than the Padres do. So realistically, and a 6.5 game lead. So there's a lot to like about the Dodgers deadline. And then when you kind of look around and see what else other teams did, the Braves got Jorge Soler. That should help out a little bit, but they didn't get any extra starting pitching. So they got to hope that Ronaldo Lopez and Max Fried aren't going to stay hurt. So, all in all, you don't like to compare all the time, but the Dodgers did well for themselves and put themselves in position to be one of the best teams, if not the best team, in the National League and in the entire league.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mentioned Kevin Kiermaier. He also got traded to the Dodgers. Ryan Yarborough's on his way to Toronto. What exactly do we think the role is going to be for Kiermaier? We'll get into that, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers, and you can get it in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Get in on the excitement and win up to 100 times your cash with the summer games on Prize Picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 while watching Team USA rack up gold medals this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineups of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. And you can still do baseball. They have a special if you are listening right now live for the Dodger game. They have a special on Tyler Glasnow strikeouts today. He only needs 4 strikeouts, and if you pick more and he gets that, then you're halfway there. You pick one other stat and you pick more or less on that one, and then you got a little combo right there, 2x combo. You can put all the way up to 6 different players and stat projections. So go check out the Prize Picks app and put together your combination right now. Download the Prize Picks app and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Means if you put anywhere from $1 to $100, you'll get that money back in bonus money. So check it out. Prize Picks app, code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, or be our first listen when you're watching here live on YouTube. We really appreciate it. If you're not an everyday already, that's someone that listens or watches every day. We'd love if you could do that. And if you're not quite ready to commit to that, you can just add one show every week to your slate. And, maybe you might build yourself up to being an everydayer. And remember, if you're already on YouTube, you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. Locked On Dodgers Postcast with host Pete Fox is available on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel live after most Dodger games and in our audio feed. All right, Jeff. So as people were maybe getting nervous, it was coming down to the deadline. Jack Flaherty trade hadn't been announced yet. Almost a minute or two right before that, it was announced that the Dodgers were trading for Kevin Kiermaier, and that set off probably – there wasn't much time in between those tweets, but I'm sure there was a lot of tweets that got off in that time. Maybe, cursing Andrew Friedman or the Dodgers or whatever else. But now knowing the fact, after the fact what happened, now looking back at Kevin Kiermaier, the Dodgers, gave up Brian Yarbrough for him. What can we expect? What do we think? What can we see as a role for Kiermaier on this team?
Yeah, we were kind of lucky there wasn't much time between those tweets. I think it might have been only 30 seconds because, that definitely would have been more of a letdown than Lance Lynn last year if the big move at the deadline was Kevin Kiermaier. Before I go on, here's that picture we talked about of Jack Flaherty that his mom shared on social media. Cute kids in Dodger clothes always do it for me. So that's I have so many pictures of my kids in little Dodger outfits. I love it. But Kevin Kiermaier is not a needle mover necessarily. I mean, he was traded for a guy who was already DFA'd. Brian Yarbrough was already leaving. But what Kevin Kiermaier brings is elite defense in center field. He can't hit this year. And we'll see if the Dodgers hitting coaches, he's never been a great hitter. You could make a case that he's never even really been a good hitter. He's got a career OPS plus of 96. He's been, I guess, if you look at 2014, his rookie season, and 2017, he was a solid hitter those years. Most of his career, he's been somewhere within a few points of average. But his defense, even at average, I mean, he's got 36.2 career WAR as a average, almost average hitter. That tells you how good his defense is. And his defense really hasn't gone down as he's aged. He is still a very, very good defensive center fielder, which means if they stick with Andy Pages in center field, you can just count on Kiermaier's in the game in the 7th or 8th inning and finishing up that game in center field. Kiermaier can pinch run for somebody and then stay in the game in center field. Whatever it is, that defensive specialist / pinch runner, yes, he's going to get some starts in the regular season. If he gets any starts in the postseason, that's because there's been injuries, and that's not a good thing. But Kiermaier is basically a free addition. He only costs money. The Dodgers have to pay the rest of his salary. We haven't heard of any money changing hands in that trade. So the Dodgers are on the hook for his salary, but they got him for Ryan Yarbrough, who was off the team anyway, wasn't contributing anything. And for me, what Kiermaier can bring to the table as far as speed and defense, I think could potentially be valuable.
Yeah, I think the Dodgers, maybe went overboard, not overboard, that's a negative connotation, but they made sure that they had extra guys available because, Chris Taylor went down the other day with the groin injury. They said it was pretty significant. It could take a while. Like that could potentially take him out the rest of the season. We don't know for sure. Miguel Rojas, we don't know exactly. The Dodgers got Ahmed Rosario. They got, Edman. They got, and now Kiermaier. They got different guys that can play strong defensively. Kiermaier is not quite the offensive guy. He has his worst career strikeout percentage this season. Like this season's just been bad. He's already announced that he's going to retire at the end of the season. So maybe this was like the Blue Jays kind of realizing like, hey, we're probably not going to make the playoffs this year. So, maybe if anybody kind of calls on you, we'll send you out there and you can maybe hopefully end your career strongly there. So yeah, it's one of those where he's going to start for right now. Once the Dodgers are all healthy, he's going to be a guy that comes in late in the games. Like if Andy Paez reemerges and is a force offensively and is playing center field, late in the season or into October, and then the Dodgers have a lead late in the game, we're probably going to see Kevin Kiermaier go out there and play center field late in the game. Or, like you said, pinch running is a little bit of a lost art just based on, you don't have as much movement in leagues anymore with the DH and everything else, but it could play a role in a big spot.
Yeah. And, one thing we know about Andy Paez, in addition to him not being a good defensive center fielder, he's not a good base runner. He has speed, but he's not a good base runner. And so if he gets on base in the 6th inning, hey, all right, pinch running for you. Thanks for your good game. And Kiermaier's taking over now. I was just looking while you were talking and checking the timeline. It was 2:54 that Robert Murray tweeted the Kiermaier trade, and 2:55 that Jeff Passan tweeted the Flaherty news. And so I can't see the seconds on this. I'd have to pull up. I don't know if they show seconds, but yeah, it was very, very close together. And yeah, like Kiermaier as a complementary piece to the whole deadline. When you look at Jack Flaherty, Tommy Edman, Michael Kopech, Ahmed Rosario, and Kevin Kiermaier, like if you look at the Dodgers' needs at this trade deadline, they addressed all of them. There's definitely more things they could have done, but this was definitely a case of the Dodgers seeing we have needs, and they went out and addressed all of them.
Yeah, and like we talked a little bit about yesterday's episode, is you're not going to be able to fill all those needs with all-star quality players, but you can improve on any needs that you have, and I think that's what the Dodgers have done. Realistically, once it's all said and done, like Kevin Biggio won't be on the roster anymore. Nick Ahmed probably won't be on the roster anymore. And, you're getting guys that are better than them on paper and throughout their career for the most part. And some of these guys. So, and then you get the guy in Flaherty that kind of really sealed it because you were already an improved team without it. But now you improved it a little bit more and in a bigger way. And again, you didn't jeopardize it. It's going to be an interesting way with the 40-man kind of the rest of the way in case if more things happen or a bunch of guys come back, but they'll figure that all out when it gets to it. But at the end of the day, like 1 through 26 is stronger, 1 through 40 is stronger, and the Dodgers put themselves in position to be able to withstand any more injuries or injuries that last longer, but also be really, really good if all those guys come back healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to throw up this comment from Orlando. Said he would have rather gotten prospects back than Kiermaier. Yeah, I would have too, but Ryan Yarbrough is not a guy that teams trade prospects for. Ryan Yarbrough is a guy that teams trade, a guy they don't want. I mean, the Blue Jays had already put Kevin Kiermaier on waivers a couple weeks ago and nobody claimed him. He was the Blue Jays version of Ryan Yarbrough, a guy they didn't need or want. They have Dalton Varsho, who's maybe the only center fielder in baseball better defensively than Kevin Kiermaier. They didn't need Kiermaier anymore, and so that's why no team was going to give the Dodgers anything a high quality for Ryan Yarbrough at this point.
Yeah, so All right. Edman and Kopech spoke with reporters. Did we hear anything? What can we expect from them, or when they're going, or when Edman's going to join specifically? We'll get into a little bit of that, and just keep talking about maybe some of the other trades that were made at the deadline. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Order supplies from the website that's made for the skilled trades. Find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a couple clicks at supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24/7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with fast delivery anywhere in the U.S. You need help with an order? Get industry-leading after-sales service from their friendly and knowledgeable customer support team, because you talk to a real person every time. And there's great news for plumbers, technicians, contractors. Being a pro has its perks. Trade industry professionals can join their free Trade Master program for free shipping and serious discounts on every order. Over 100,000 pros already trust the Trade Master program to deliver results. Apply for your membership today and get a competitive edge on every order at supplyhouse.com/TM. Save money and time when you order online. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, want to thank you for making us your first listen or one of your listens throughout the day. Make sure to go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Had you been an insider on Tuesday, you would have gotten a lot of these notifications of the Dodgers trades almost instantly from when we saw them on our timelines, and you would have got some other updates throughout the day. But now as we move forward, there's still updates, there's still rumors, and well, maybe not rumors, but there's more news and thoughts and different things that can happen with the Locked On Dodgers insider. So go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. All right, Jeff. Yeah, looks like Tommy Edman spoke to reporters and kind of gave a little bit of a timeline in terms of when he's going to come back. And it's not a matter of the wrist issue anymore. It's more a matter of the ankle issue that he got when he was trying to come back from the wrist injury. And he said he was close to playing defense. He had been DH in his rehab assignments up to this point. So you got to imagine, ideal world, it's going to be maybe like 10, 15 days for him to come back.
Yeah. Edman will be back at some point, but it's definitely not imminent, which is probably for the best, because the Dodgers already have some roster decisions they need to make with Flaherty and Kiermaier. They don't have to make them today, but in the next day or two, they're going to have to add those guys to the active roster. I think it's 48 hours after a trade. I don't remember for sure. But, looking at obviously Dave Roberts did say just in the last little bit that he doesn't expect Freddie Freeman back during this series with the Padres. And then the Dodgers have another day off. So we won't see Freddie back before Friday at the soonest, which means Hunter Fiducia is an easy decision to send back down for one of these guys. Realistically, I would assume the other one is James Outman, because as long as Freeman's out, Kevin Biggio is basically the first baseman. He is the only guy with extensive experience playing first base on the roster. And so that probably gives Biggio a little bit of a reprieve. So I would guess that it's Fiducia and Outman going down tomorrow so that they can add Flaherty and Kiermaier. And then when Freddie comes back, then Biggio gets DFA. Do you think that sounds about right?
Yeah, that makes the most sense. Like Kenny put here in the chat, Gus Varland and Nick Ramirez were designated for assignment to make room on the 40-man roster. No big loss there. Gus Varland, the Dodgers had already lost and then got back last year, and he filled the role of being a guy that's been able to be called up a couple times, and so did Nick Ramirez whenever they needed arms. But realistically, they're not going to hopefully need those arms. So yeah, I mean, that is kind of what makes sense in terms of the roster. Obviously, there's different moves to come as guys start getting healthy, but we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. The other thing that came out of the pregame, Dave Roberts did mention that Michael Kopech is going to start working with the Dodgers pitching development staff. So that'll be exciting to see what they have in mind for him. Like we've said yesterday, the stuff is nasty. He's had good results here and there, but not consistently. And if the Dodgers can just, whether it's change up a little thing or have one pitch be thrown a little bit different or a little bit more, I think the Dodgers are going to have a bullpen piece that can be used in high leverage situations.
Yeah, I think so too. Our buddy Joe in the chat makes a good point. I totally forgot the pitcher limit. And so one of the moves would have to be a pitcher, which means that, somebody, Outman is getting a reprieve even longer because it's going to have to be a pitcher going down because they had already removed Yarbrough. Yarbrough's spot was already taken up by Kopech yesterday. So some pitcher will have to go down. My guess there would probably be Alex Vestia to the IL. I think, we said he probably needs a rest anyway. His velocity was down the other day, so I think that could justify it from a physical standpoint. Because beyond that, like we've talked about a lot, Dodgers don't have many pitchers with options available. And so it's, there's some weird roster decisions, which is why it was like I expected Pages and or Outman, one or both of them, to be traded because of these roster things. And it's almost like they did too good of a job of not trading from the active roster.
Yeah, well, they have five in the rotation right now, so Flaherty would kick one of those guys out. So maybe
it could be Robleski or Ryan, I guess.
Yeah,
unless they want to go with a 6-man rotation.
Yeah. I mean, it all kind of depends. Robleski, maybe they start using him in that different role, like the Yarbrough role of old, and maybe Honeywell, can be a different guy like that too. There's a lot of ways they can go about it. Robleski would be a little bit tough at this point in the season because you don't want to have him start all of a sudden throwing multiple times a week if you put him into a reliever role. So yeah, we'll see. With the days off, might be a matter of Robleski goes down for now, and then the next time they need a breather or a 6 starter, he'll come back up.
Yeah, and with a lot of it depends on what they're thinking. One thing I learned this trade deadline is that what I think is best for the Dodgers isn't necessarily what they think is best. We saw that with Randy Arozarena and Isaac Paredes. The Dodgers weren't really even in on those guys who we thought would be good fits, so they definitely have a different plan. And so I assume that they are already thinking about what role, if any, they want Robleski and Ryan to play in October. Both guys could potentially be relief options in October. So it could be a thing where they make one of them a long reliever right now, ease him into that role. I don't know, but yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what they do over the next couple of days with the roster, because that'll kind of give us some hints as to what they're thinking long-term going forward.
Yeah, so we'll see there. I see a comment here about Flaherty not being an innings eater. It's interesting. He's gone only 5 innings, or he's gone less than 6 innings in 1, 2, 3, 4 of his last 6 starts. But he's also has one of those starts he threw 60 pitches. One of those starts he threw 73 pitches. One of those starts, he did go late, deep in that one, 83. So it maybe wasn't always a matter of efficiency. It's just a matter of, the Tigers are playing a little bit different ball game than the Dodgers are. But he's a guy, and he also had a little bit of a back injury flare up, so that could have been part of that as well.
Yeah, when you are a team that you have a guy who has a little bit of a nagging injury and you're hoping to trade him, it makes sense to limit his innings. And that what that means for the Dodgers could just mean that, hey, he's still at a relatively reasonable innings count. He's only at 106, 107 innings pitched this year, which means that he can now, like you said, like some of them, it was like his last start, 6 innings, 96 pitches. If Dodgers can get 6 innings, 96 pitches from him, we'll be happy. But those 2 games, the beginning of June, I think that was around the time he missed a start in between those 2. That was when the back injury was having some issues. And so 5 innings in each of those games, but only a total of 133 pitches between those 2 games, which is 13.3 pitches per inning, which is perfectly reasonable as far as what's the word I'm looking for? Efficiency goes. And so, yeah, I'm not too worried about that if he's healthy. And that's always been the thing we said several times about Flaherty. If he's healthy, I think he's going to do just fine as far as innings goes, and quantity and quality.
Yeah. So Um, Around the division, we can go real quick. The Padres, like I mentioned, they picked up Tanner Scott and another reliever from the Marlins, Brian Hoeing, I think. They also picked up Martin Perez from the Pirates, who's, I believe, a starting pitcher. The Giants got Mark Canha from the Tigers. The D-backs got Josh Bell and Dylan Floro. I think those were the only two moves they made. So, none of the teams chasing the Dodgers got significantly better. If anything, the Padres did, but Tanner Scott also has some underlying numbers that maybe don't point in the direction of him being dominant. But it was also someone that we kind of were minded on the Dodgers, so we can't say too much about that. But
yeah, the Padres are definitely a better team than they were a couple days ago. They are in much worse shape for the future, which makes sense because they have a GM who might get fired if they don't have a successful season. So it makes sense that they are going all out for this season. And they've had decent success in the past of rebuilding a farm system after depleting it. It is kind of weird to have the 27th ranked farm system less than a year after trading Juan Soto. But that's and it would be even worse. They've just got a couple really highly rated prospects and then nothing. So it'll be interesting to see, but they're definitely a better team than they were.
Yeah, and there was just a lot of trades quantity wise, maybe not quite quality names that we've had seen in the past. The White Sox did trade one of their outfielders, but it wasn't Luis Robert Jr. It was Eloy Jimenez. He's a little bit more of a DH, which was very random. Garrett Crochet stayed, Tarek Skubal stayed. The Angels didn't trade anybody other than one reliever to the Red Sox. So, Rengifo, Taylor Ward, those guys all ended up staying. So, for when you look back at it even more, Dodgers got maybe not the best reliever available, but maybe the best stuff of any reliever available or that was traded. They got the best starter that was traded. And then position player wise, they're Rosario, this year's Rosario can play into that mix. Tommy Edman, career wise can play into that mix of, one of the better position players moved.
Yeah, more of a depth thing from position player side, but addressing their specific needs, which is what you do at the trade deadline. You don't do it in the draft. You don't draft for need, but you definitely trade for need at the trade deadline, and that's what the Dodgers did. So there's definitely the Dodgers are a better team than they were a couple days ago. They'll be an even better team when Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts come back. They'll be an even better team if Max Muncy comes back, if Yoshinobu Yamamoto comes back. There's some wins and there's some ifs. But if all of those hit, they are a really, really good team.
Yeah, and different from years past is that they're not waiting for those, other than Mookie Betts. The others, I don't believe they're kind of sitting and waiting and hoping. Yamamoto, if he doesn't come back, you're probably comfortable with Glasnow and Flaherty, and then two of Stone, Kershaw, River. You're comfortable enough with that. To where it doesn't make a big difference. Whereas the years past, they didn't make the moves and we're waiting for guys, and then those guys didn't end up coming back. So.
Yeah, hopefully this cautiousness with Yamamoto, let him be totally healthy, come back, get ready for October, will pay dividends, and a rest for Mookie might help him too. So
yeah. All right. Well, you got anything else, Jeff?
No, there's so much going on. Dodgers play a game in hour and a half now. So we won't be back tonight after the game. I guess we'll talk about both games of the Padres.
Something crazy happens.
Yeah, if Tyler Glasnow throws a perfect game, we will be back. But otherwise, probably just after the second game of this 2-game series with the Padres, we will wrap up the whole series heading into the next off day.
Yep, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. I think this is probably one of our biggest live shows, so appreciate you guys that are here watching this live. And make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure we come in every day, everybody listening or watching every day. You can tell your friends, family, coworkers, anybody that's a Dodger fan in your life that there's a Dodger podcast for them 5 days a week for about 30 minutes a day called Locked On Dodgers, and they should check it out. Remember, if you're on YouTube, you can check out Locked On Sports Today or Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, brought to you or bringing you the biggest news and stories, the sports world and the LA sports world. Locked On Dodgers Postcast with host Pete Fox is available after most Dodger games live on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel. You can go beyond the podcast, come on Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. Get text directly from us or text us directly back, and it's just a few bucks a month. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. There should be more content coming there, hopefully in the next couple weeks. You can find Jeff on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us for any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, take your smart device, play a podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.